So we got to a point where we were talking about Harrogate and into your mid to late teens, shall we say?
No, early teens.
Early
really,
teens, 14.
Really early, just gone, into 14.
Yeah.
And we were already sort of hanging around, and I caught the attention of, because remember I was tall, and I looked the part. I was always very good with makeup and with clothes and whatever I had, to look the part. And I caught the attention of one of the cool guys. Would have been a sort of hippie. And people have this funny idea these days that hippies are all like, oh wow, flower children, peace and love and all the rest of it. And a lot of these lads were not like that at all. They were dandy boys. And they were they were quite hard. People forget this. Or they don't realise. It wasn't all peace and love and all the rest of it. Even if they looked like that and they had their Liberty Voile shirt on and their light loons and their all the rest of it. Anyway, this guy took an interest in me when I was absolutely I couldn't tell you his name now, but I could draw a picture of him. And I was thrilled because, like, he was considerably older, probably in his 20s. And, well, do you know what? My friends were so jealous. He's like interested in you. He sits with you. He like twirls a bit of your hair in his finger and all of this sort of business. To like flirting and paying attention. And I thought, and he said, "Do you want to go for a walk one Saturday afternoon?" And that was a sort of key phrase amongst us, that we would go to the big park in the middle of town, which is called the Valley Gardens. And if you walk through it and up, and it gets a bit wilder, and then I think it goes off into Harlow Car Gardens, I think, eventually. But anyway. And if you went up there, you were going up there to snog. It was very exciting. And so I was in a blaze, I was in an absolute blaze of blinded with joy. And we walked along and we talked about music and and all of this sort of thing, and it was fabulous. And we went up to we started having a snog, and I was just thought, this is love, this is what grown-ups do. This is like I'm a woman now. Obviously I was a virgin, and it's a common story. He decided he wanted more than I was prepared to give him. I was frightened, out of my depth. I had no idea what was going on. He wanted to get laid. He wasn't going to take no for an answer. I tried, pushing him away to get up, and he just got me by the neck. And he pushed me down and was choking me. And people say to me quite often, how can you be so detached about this, and why aren't you in tears and all the rest of it? Well, one, it was a very long time ago, and B, and the other thing is, PTSD, which I suffer from, gives you an enormous amount of detachment. So I'm fully aware of that screaming teenager in the back of my mind, but in the front of my mind as I'm talking, it's not a thing. So at one point, I remember he had his knee in my chest, and it really hurt. I couldn't breathe, and I was being choked, and there was roaring and singing in my ears, and I thought, he's going to kill me. And I don't know why I thought that, but I remember with quite clarity, a moment of clarity, he's going to kill me. I thought he was going to do something. I wasn't sure what rape was. I really wasn't quite sure what that was. But I thought it was a bad thing. He's going to do something bad, and he's going to kill me. Because my father had weapons trained me, and trained me in unarmed combat from being a child. So I knew what somebody in a killing temper might look like. I could barely see anything, and I remember thinking, nothing. I didn't think anything. I think just this was it. And then there was a shout, and he dropped me and ran off. And I was like half unconscious. So I was lying there in the long grass with half unconscious. Woke up, there was a yellow Labrador. I've always liked yellow dogs since this. There was a yellow Labrador snuffling at me, and drooling like they do. And this guy came up, and called his dog off and looked at me and walked off without a word. He'd shouted something like, "Oi, what are you doing?" The young man had fucked off and left me to it, and he fucked off and left me to it as well. And I lay there for quite a long time. The pain in my chest, my neck hurt, face felt really sore. Anyway, I thought I got up, and I remember walking through, then down and through and out of the park, and there was a ladies' loo, I think, sort of just before you got out, a public loo. And as I was walking along, I remember people were looking at me, and I was just oblivious. And I went into the loo, and I looked like Dracula, because all my eyes had hemorrhaged, and there was hemorrhage marks on my face, and there were, you know, marks of his hand on my neck like that. And I got home somehow or another and told my mother that I got conjunctivitis from school, and she swallowed this without a question. And I had ointment for conjunctivitis to put in my eyes, and I wore what was called an Isadora scarf for quite a long time till all the marks went. These were a very, very long 6-foot crepe fabric scarf, and you wrapped it around your neck and the ends floated away. It was very, very 70s and 60s. Isadora scarf, and I wore this for like a good 2 weeks, in bed and out. As I was walking through the park, I knew I couldn't tell anyone.
What just happened?
With an awful clarity, I knew that no matter what, I couldn't tell anyone. I couldn't tell my parents, because I thought I was protecting them. It would be too awful for them. They wouldn't be able to cope with it. What would happen, you know? I couldn't tell my friends because he'd been the cool guy, you know. And that this was not the idyll that we all thought, you know, dating was going to be. I couldn't tell obviously I couldn't tell the police. That was just like a joke. You wouldn't even think of that. I don't think it even entered my mind.
So where did it go?
Where did it go? Oh, put it away, didn't I? Put it away in a box somewhere far, far away.
You've told people, like, later in life.
Because I put it away and I made it trivial. I made it a joke. I made it nothing. I made it desiccated and dry and put it away somewhere. And it's only in the last 10 years or so I felt able to actually talk about it, because it was the start of many such incidents. Because when you do that to a girl at that age, or a boy, I suppose it would be exactly the same, you make them feel worthless. You're not of importance or interest. I'd already been told I was ugly, I was told I was stupid and all the rest of it. And now I was worthless as well. And if it got out, I'd have no reputation, which was very important in those days.
Incredibly. You were about to say that you took someone's advice, but again, it sounded like you were going to say you took Rob or something's advice, but then you stopped and moved on. You took someone's advice.
No, I don't know. I was very, very angry. Very, very, very angry.
After this?
I was quite angry before, actually, to be honest with you. I was an angry kid.
What would you call it? What would you call that? What is that situation? That's as you explained it to me, that's
an attempted rape murder.
Right. I was about to say traumatic experience, but obviously, yeah, absolutely, I completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Attempted rape. Yeah.
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 With a possible murder. In the consequence of it. I just was very cross after that.
Obviously about what had happened, but also it sounds like there's something else there that you were also suddenly cross about.
There was what I didn't realise. I actually saw him in the pub. It's not like I never saw him again. So I remember going up to him and throwing a drink over him. That was never done. You never did that. Girls never did anything like that. And he just laughed. And what I didn't realise was he told all his mates about me. So basically they all tried to have a go. Oh yeah. Never occurred to me that. Not for years and years and years, not for decades. I wondered why I kept getting into trouble with guys. And the reason was that he told them all I was easy. That was his revenge. You know, that was how he got his revenge, like he needed revenge.
Pack mentality.
Yeah. So I remember ending up in this house with this Canadian guy who was a friend of his on one night, one occasion, and he was chasing me around the fucking living room, and I didn't want to, you know, I was still a virgin again. I didn't want to, go I wanted to get out, and a woman put her head around the door, who's obviously shared the house with him, and went, "What are you doing? She's obviously underage." And he went, "Oh, that doesn't matter." She said, "Yes, it does. If the police come here, you know what we've got upstairs." Drugs, probably. And he literally took me to the front door and literally kicked me down the steps. I landed on my hands and knees on the gravel.
Ouch.
And I went home and I thought, is this relationships? It must be. I don't know anything else. I didn't realise at the time that Harrogate was actually one of the biggest drugs clearing houses in the north of England at the time.
Convenient spot, though.
Convenient spot.
Yeah.
Well, by the sea, you know. And and also nobody thought about it because it was so respectable that they didn't think about that. They didn't realise there was a massive hipster underground scene, you know, of druggies. And a lot of drugs came through Harrogate. I mean, I remember going up to somebody's house on the way to a party, and they said, "Oh, we'll just pop in here," and we popped in here, and we were in this. It was a sort of shared house, but where would have been the dining room would have been. There was a table, and it was just piled up with blocks of hash, like that, big blocks. You know, like big blocks of hash.
Howard Marks Stanford.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I think he chipped a bit off and gave it to my friend, and we went off, you know, and we didn't think anything of it. But around about that time, when I was probably about 15 or so, I was one of the guys in the Montmartre asked me to carry a bag for him to another guy who I did know was a dealer. He was a big, you know, gangstery kind of hippie gangsters. You see, people don't think about that either, but they were. What else was Howard Marks if not a hippie gangster? But and would I take this bag to him? And I said to him, "What's in the bag?" He said, "Just some trips." I said, "But there's something lumpy and heavy in there. What is it?" And he said, "Well, that's nothing to worry about." And I said, "Well, what is it?" Because I was quite cheeky with them, you know. So they thought I was quite ballsy. They thought I was a, you know, ballsy chick. It was just because I was so angry all the time. So, "Well, what is it?" And he said, "Oh, well, it's just a handgun. It's a busted up handgun. It's in bits. It's legal if it's in. It's all right if it's in bits. It's all right. You can't do anything to you if it's in bits. It's legal." And I thought, I'm sure that's not true. But anyway, there were 500 acid trips and a busted and a broken up handgun.
That's enough to put you in Borstal.
Oh God, yeah.
Isn't
And
it?
yeah. And he said, "Will you take it across to this other pub?" So I went first to the pub where we all went, and of course the police chose that moment to raid it for underage drinkers.
Oh God.
So there I am, sitting there like I know where the lie with my Greek hand-woven tote bag, which was all the rage, with another bag inside with this stuff. Thinking, well, I've done it now. So I thought, best not just do anything. So I waited, and of course I did look 18. So they didn't even look at me. And I made, you know, when they walk somebody out, I was like, oh, as if kids hanging around places like this, you know, where us grown-ups are, you know, face
just to blend
it.
it.
Yeah, singing it, you know, like this, trying to blend. And walked across town, Julie handed the bag over and had a reputation of being, you know, sound. And then I got to go to the good parties, which were interesting. And yeah, then I met up with sort of various guys, and then one guy once injected me with heroin. and that was quite interesting because he just did it through my genes, this bike, and I vomited into a wastebasket for 2.5 hours, and I disliked it so much because I hate vomiting. I'll do just about anything not to vom, and I've been vomiting in front of these cool guys for about 2.5 hours into a waste bin, as I say. And I thought, I'm never going to do this again, this is shit. I'd rather have the Valium. So my vanity, basically, prevented me from becoming an actual drug addict.
Never a good look, though.
Never a good look,
Shouting
darling.
down the white telephone,
Yeah,
yeah, sink, toilet bin,
yeah, but
window.
I got a massive abscess on my leg from the dirty injection, which my nan looked after, actually, with a poultice made out of hot bread and salt, not knowing what it was from.
You were still seeing your nan at that point?
Oh, my nan! Well, my nan was still alive, and she would come up, and stay with us, in Harrogate for a few weeks, and then she'd go back. She'd go back to Portsmouth again, where she lived, really. And I remember coming home one Sunday afternoon, absolutely off my box on acid, and there's actually a photograph existent somewhere of me going outside in the garden, and everyone saying, "Oh, she's so silly.
With the dog.
She's in a silly mood."
With the dog.
With the dog, with Cleo, yeah.
Cleo was
my spaniel. She was a yellow dog, a very silly animal. She was the original dumb blonde, was Cleo. But yeah, did no idea because I had no idea of the life I was living. I living a completely separate life, and it was kind of probably around this time that I started more drifting towards these biker guys. They all had old British bikes. It was that sort of thing. I always liked motorcycles. I liked the idea of them.
Triumph.
You're a great deal younger than me. Please
just
don't even try to remember the names of British bikes.
Well, they're so iconic, though.
Yeah, I know, but don't.
They're so
seriously.
iconic. The Triumphs.
Seriously,
and
don't.
BSA and all these things,
Yeah.
They
were that. It was that sort of thing. Yes. Bastard stopped again. Best scrap available. All of this. And
Lawrence.
And but of course they were all very young and didn't have any money. So these bikes were always in a terrible state of disrepair. And I remember coming home from being given a lift home from the dance, or somewhere, on the back of one of these lads' motorcycles, and getting towards my house and saying, "Put your fucking feet down, we've got no brakes." And we basically just drove into a hedge. Thought it was hilarious, of course, but could have been killed. And the plan was always to get my own motorcycle. That was always the plan. But we went around all over the place, and then I started going, because we used to go out into Leeds from Harrogate to go to the big, when we were a bit older. Because I'd met a guy when I was 16 who was in his 20s, and we were dating, and he had long hair and a car and all the things that you should have. He was also an absolute bastard, but neither here nor there. But we used to go to Leeds. If you could get to Leeds, that was the thing. You would go to the equivalent was the phonograph. I don't know if it was called the phonograph then, or they called that later, but that's where it was. And go dancing there and sort of listen to music there.
And the music of the time was?
Hawkwind, Silver Machine and things like that, at the time. And I'd started going to art school. I left school with not very much. I had 4 O levels.
Post psychedelia, that 70s.
Yeah,
psychedelia.
Yeah.
We're
I'm trying to think what the great dance numbers were, but I'd dance to anything, so it wouldn't really matter.
You mentioned Thin Lizzy, but also like in the alternative scene, there must have been like the Bowie coming in at that point as well.
Oh, I used to dress up as David Bowie because I started going to I went to the art school to a foundation course. So naturally, I dressed up as David Bowie as best as I could, you know. Of course I did. You just would. I'd actually seen Bowie in his curly perm phase, because I'd started going to as many concerts as I could go to, as often as I could go. My poor old dad used to have to like run me to Bradford to St George's Hall to go and see Led Zeppelin, or you know, pick me up from Leeds, you know, at university, because we'd been to see Fleetwood Mac or something like that, you know. Poor man used to be sitting out there, loads of dads sitting in a rows, you know, to pick you up, bless him. And yeah, you went to everything that you could. But he came in the caftan and the curly perm stage, which was early in his career, to the Harrogate Theatre. We very occasionally put on a concert, and I remember watching him thinking, he's very thin, terribly thin, and I'm not sure whether I liked it or not. I've been taken off to at one point to the Isle of Wight festival when I was about 14 with a group of lads in a van. I think I told my mother I was going to see my auntie Doll, who lived on the Isle of Wight. And somebody woke me up and said Jimi Hendrix is on, and I was like, and he was like that big, you know, like that far away, and I was like, okay, I've seen Hendrix. I haven't really, but you know, I was there. Oh, we went to all kinds of things with anything to do with music, poetry. I joined a poetry group. Yes, when I was about 16, they were a group of lads doing poetry, and I think they needed a girl. And I think they hoped they were going to get somebody like, you know, wore a paisley frock and was malleable. They did performances. This was the thing at the time. And I remember turning up for this gig in the van, and their faces were masks of horror. I'd made something I'd made this fantastic costume out of blue lame. It was sparkly. And it was like a halter neck and a tiered skirt, and I had a pink Spanish piano shawl, a fiesta shawl, a feria shawl, you know, on with all the embroidery and the fringes. And I went, "Hello, lads." They were there in tweed and corduroy, going, "Christ!" And I actually found myself a guitar player. So that early on, I was doing music with it as well. I found myself a guitar player. There was this dreadful stoner who just used to play twaddle behind me while I declaimed passionately at the front of the stage. I was 16, you know what I mean? I thought I was the other David Bowie of poetry, really. That's what I thought I was. But but I was getting, you know, I got published in little magazines, and I got like, everybody said to me, "Oh, you're going to have a great future in poetry." And the more they said that, the more I didn't want to.
Why?
Do you know, it's funny, I just didn't want to. I didn't want their expectations, because I remember actually thinking, they'll make me be something that I'm not. They'll want me to be something that I'm not, and I don't know what I am, but I know it's not that.
Sylvia Plath.
So, I don't think they like Sylvia Plath either. I know Ted Hughes didn't. But you know, because I'd had that critique from, actually talking to Ted Hughes, I'd had that critique from him, and I was supposed to be this prodigy of poetry, you know, I was going to be something. I didn't want it.
What did you want?
I wanted the whole entire world, but on my terms.